And we are back. There we go. Bit of a pre-Super Bowl NFL action.
Yeah, as I said in the chat, I hope the quality is a little bit better on Sunday than that. Although I appreciated the fake outs by Adam. That is definitely the sign of someone who hasn't played Madden very much because they barely ever work.
If if
But
you were
thanks for that, guys.
gripped by that, then the full version of that video will be available on YouTube shortly after we finish, which we'll make sure we link.
Yes, and if you're still with us, which hopefully you are, otherwise you wouldn't hear me saying this, we're now going to talk about, as I mentioned before, one of our favourite subjects, the extended experience. And this is coming hot off the back of the announcement of Sonic. We thought it would be interesting to have a look at the impact that TV shows and films that have been adapted from video games and the impact that they have on video game sales. But just before we get going, for anyone who might not have heard us speak about it before, we've talked about it on our blog and on our YouTube channel. Dan, do you just want to explain what we mean by the extended experience?
Yes, I would love to. And for those that have heard me talk about this, sorry, but here we go again. So when we talk with our clients in the games industry, we talk about the extended experience as the overall player journey with an IP or with a game studio, and that's kind of easy to default to thinking, well, that's when they start playing the game, and then it ends when they stop playing the game. But that's what we refer to as the core experience, and actually your interaction with a game title starts way before then and it lasts way after then. And so we call this the extended experience, which is effectively starting when you first hear about a game. So when it's first on your radar, that's the beginning of your experience with a brand or a game or a studio. And when we give that due consideration, we can start to plan and curate that experience rather than just being a consequence of the news cycles or who happens to see our communications. And if we plan it as a considered part of the overall experience, we can start to take the DNA from a game and really feed that through into every piece of marketing, communications, and engagement work that we do. So that can be stemming from trailers to companion apps to your website to your marketing campaign. And as we say, this can span all the way into the future, long after a game has you've played through a game, but actually you're remembering it fondly and chatting about it online. That's still you're still having an experience with this brand. So that's what we call the extended experience. And yeah, a big part of that, as is more and more frequently used and has been around for a long time, is this idea of sort of TV and film tie-ins, which I believe is what we're going to be talking about today.
It is, yeah. So it's not a new concept. The adaptation of video games into films and TV series. We've spoken before about how it's they can go hand in hand. It's quite a medium that they work well together, and you can adapt them. And because of the storytelling, it works quite well. But I want to start off by talking about The Witcher, which I know that you're a fan of, Dan. So I was just doing a bit of research, as I like to do. And from December 2018 and then the year-on-year number in December 2019, they saw a 554% increase in sales of physical copies of The Witcher 3, which is a huge increase. And what happened in December 2019? The Witcher series was released on Netflix. So there's no getting away that had a massive impact on the physical sales. And not only the physical sales, in December, the game beat its launch day numbers on Steam. It also broke its record for concurrent players. It went over 100,000 concurrent players in January of 2020, obviously not long after the series came out. And we also talk a lot about long life games, and it wasn't just an impact on The Witcher 3 that the series had. The first game in the series beat its concurrent player record, which was nowhere near as high, but it got over 12,000 concurrent players for the first time it ever had, and that was the first game in the series. The second game didn't break any records, but it saw a big bump in its players. And as someone who's watched the series and played the game, did the series make you re-engage with the game or engage with the game for the first time?
Uh, so I probably wasn't that long after having experienced the game that I heard about the Netflix series, so it was very well timed for me. I haven't gone back to the game since, but it's worth noting as well for anybody who's not overly familiar with the series. The Witcher originally was actually a series of novels So it was a book first. So when we talk about the extended experience, this brand has gone from books to games to TV, and as you say, kind of the impact of one going to the other is clearly significant. And I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I think I remember reading this that the TV series had an impact on the games, and the games have also had an impact on the book sales, and they're all kind of boosting each other. And those numbers are significant because this was not a small game to begin with. This was a very popular, very well regarded, well sold game in the first instance, which is obviously why they chose that this is a powerful enough brand to bring to Netflix. But yeah, that is some significant impact as a result of that transmedia move.
Yeah, you're right. And on the books as well, I did see as well that 500,000 extra copies were sent to print as a result off the back of the series. So that's, as you said, that's a great example of three different entertainment mediums working together to have kind of like this groundswell, all helping each other to benefit. And so I guess the question is, there's a second season of The Witcher that's going to be coming or has come. Will you play the game? Do you think you will get back into the game when the series comes out? Because obviously that's what's happened with the first series. Do you think that's going to happen with the second series? I think it will. You personally, do you think do you think you'll play, and do you think we'll see a similar effect
That
with the
is a
game?
good question actually, because we all know I'm a sucker for the hype train of things, and yeah, I'm very excited for the second season of The Witcher on Netflix. And yeah, I certainly haven't exhausted all there is to see. I haven't ever played the first two Witcher games, so maybe that's viable fodder. But what it also does lead me to ponder is the Witcher series of games, obviously made by CD Projekt Red, who make Cyberpunk 2077. I'm yet to check that out, and I know it's kind of got that's obviously it's a completely different game, but it's got that same open world narrative experience. So again, yeah, be interested to see if there's a knock-on effect on that as well.
Yeah, and obviously we've got the Last of Us TV series, which is coming soon. So it'll be interesting to see if that has kind of the Witcher effect. Will that see an influx of people playing and buying the game when that series hits? I'm going to put my neck on the line and say yes. I think that probably will happen because that is really is what the intention that they're going for is. I've got some numbers here for another game, a very different game. So Pokemon Go. The game had been out for quite a long time, and was kind of not faltering, but kind of people. It wasn't as hyped as it was when it first came out. But then when the Detective Pikachu film was announced, they promoted the film as part of the game, added some new characters. That film came out in May of 2019, and it was reported that Pokemon Go saw an increase of 33% increase in in-game sales between January and April of that year while they were cross promoting. So again, you can see how the anticipation of a film based on not necessarily based on Pokemon Go, but based on that IP has driven people back into playing the game or maybe picking the game up for the first time. And it's not 554%, but we know how big mobile gaming is and how high the in-game sales are. So to have a 33% increase in 4 months is huge off the back of the film promotion before the film even came out.
Yeah, and I'm sure the film was to some degree a success in and of itself. So yeah, the Pokemon company or whoever makes bank as a result of these is very happy with that little experiment.
Yeah, I mean the Pokemon IP is just ripe for. I mean, it was obviously there was a TV series and the games, and there's been a load of movies before. Pokemon 2000, great film. But yeah, the power of the IP, like similar with The Witcher, they drive each other. Like people will go see the films because they like the games, and then people will go to the games if they like the films, and people who like both will groundswell and do both. So it's really interesting to see that those figures, like it's clear that it has an impact, and backing that up as well. Ubisoft, when the Assassin's Creed movie came out, which I think was 2016, they essentially said they came out and said this is a marketing thing. Like this isn't for making a movie. This is a marketing tactic. They said that they weren't going to make an awful lot of money off of the film, But I've got a good quote from Ubisoft here, and they said, "We have our core fans, but what we would like is to put the franchise in front of a lot more people who maybe will then pick up a future copy of Assassin's Creed." So clearly, back in 2016, they could see the value in it, and it's quite refreshing for them just to come out in the open and be like, "This is marketing." Like, and it's you know, not every game is going to be able to do this, but it's interesting that a feature film, a Hollywood feature film, is factoring into somebody's marketing plan like that. So that is
To
mind
have
blowing,
those
but
marketing budgets, hey.
yeah, like would be nice. But it's cool to see them come out and they said that, and Assassin's Creed is huge, so it works. And Monster Hunter as well said a similar thing, not so bluntly, but their film came out I think just at the end of last year. And they said they were doing a number of initiatives to boost excitement and hype for the game franchise, of which the Hollywood adapted film is one of those things. So again, they're referencing that they're using the film to build the hype. And yeah, it's as you say, it would be great to have those kind of budgets where you can throw a feature film into your
Yeah,
marketing mix. To raise engagement in your game, but we're seeing it more and more and time after time that people are engaging with this. So clearly, if you have the money to do that, it works. And it's not necessarily either that you can you make the film yourself. There's money to be made off licensing the IP, which I assume is what happens a lot of the time, rather than the publishers doing the film. They license out the IP, and that gets it wider and gets broader appeal.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth noting that obviously these are massive, massive brands already. So it'd be yeah, you obviously have to consider, is our brand strong enough? We talk about long life games, do we have a legacy that spans long enough? And a big part of this will be, particularly, I think Assassin's Creed is a good example where this is perhaps saying, oh, let's get back on the radar of maybe some lapsed gamers. The original Assassin's Creed is quite an old title now, and people grow up and get busy, and maybe they've moved out of the games media spheres where they would be aware of the latest Assassin's Creed news and things like that. Whereas when you take a sideways step into this other more mainstream, perhaps, I say more mainstream, where people who aren't wouldn't consider themselves active gamers anymore, they are probably more likely to see and consume movie media, and that could kind of inspire that. Oh, yeah, I want to go back and check out the game. So yeah, I think it's certainly a correlation of these impacts on sales and these success stories. And it's not going to be, you can't just take any game and make a movie of it. You've got to have the renown and the audience, but clearly when you get that right, it really helps.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about hitting the medium where the people are. Because me myself, I'm a big film fan, big TV series fan. So if those things cross my view and they get my attention, that is what's going to necessarily pull me back into a game. It's like, oh yeah, I remember how much I like this. And going back to what you were saying at the beginning about the experience doesn't start and end with putting the game in and taking it out of the disk drive. It's that gets your attention, and it's about hitting those touch points that aren't the game, because we all interact with a multitude of different screens and media. And if you just limit yourself to the game itself, you're essentially leaving money on the table. You're leaving people's time on the table, because if they are interested in your IP, they'll want to get as much out of it as possible. So if you're a fan of a game and then a TV series comes out, chances are you're going to watch the TV series. Or if you're a fan of the game, not played the game recently, and the TV series come out, it's going to prompt you to get back in, because that's reminded you about it. It's getting in front of people, as you say, where they are. And we know from the figures, people watch a lot of TV and a lot of films.
I
So
think it's interesting as well with this kind of modern era of these adaptations. They're being done extremely well. I mean, obviously there's always some objectivity, but when you look back to maybe, this is, like you said, this isn't a new practice. Film games like Tomb Raider, for example, or there's film adaptations go back a long time, but it seems like the the quality bar, and I don't know if it's the respect for the IP that's now at a good place, or whether it's um, the actual quality of the IPs themselves now are at a point where, yeah, this does seamlessly transition to the big and small screen. And yeah, the just there was a period when it's like, oh, cringe, there's an adaptation being made, but that's not the case anymore. It is genuinely exciting for these announcements and these reveals, and yeah, the fan base are kind of expecting of it and always willing to embrace, which is yeah, great opportunity for these studios with those powerful brands.
Yeah, and what we've spoke about before, like in our blogs and on our other videos, is that it gives people who work on the games and are involved in the games another creative outlet as well, because there's a lot of the games are such narrative driven games and story driven games that there's a whole multitude of different ways that you can take characters, take themes, take ideas, and if you break that out of just the game and you go into TV or you go into film or you go into comics or books, that you can explore that, and it really lets the creative people flex their muscles and take their IP further than you could potentially take it if you just restrict yourself to the game. So it not only benefits the people who are fans of the game, it also lets the people who have created the games and love their IP like it's their child. They can do what they want with it, and they can push it even further than they have on the games consoles. So
Yeah, is there any particular games that you or anybody in the chat would be particularly interested in seeing an adaptation to film or TV of? Anything that springs to mind for you, or any that you know of that you're excited about?
well, I was a big fan of the GoldenEye game, so if they make a GoldenEye film, I'd definitely be up for seeing that. Adam has said Mass Effect 2, the movie, of
Of
course.
course, he has. I mean,
Uh,
that does seem like I'm a big sci-fi film fan. So yeah, the Mass Effect universe appeals to me from a yeah from a film or TV. I'd be interested in seeing that.
yeah. Uh, any others that you'd be up for? I'm trying to think anything I've played recently which could, because you know me, I'm always like all my favorite games are like on the Nintendo 64. So
Super Mario Land.
yeah, that'd be
Uh,
great. I'd watch a Super Mario movie.
yeah, I mean, you could. I think. I mean, any of the AAA blocks, and I mean, we mentioned on the show before, if The Last of Us, is that got a TV series?
Yeah, the TV series is coming. They've just changed their director, and to a. I'm not even going to attempt to say the name because I absolutely butchered it in the news the other week. But they've just picked up a new director for that on HBO, and HBO typically do great TV series. So I'm sure that's going to be brilliant. Steve is saying Overcooked the movie.
There
That
we
would be
go.
that would be good. That would be hectic. I remember playing Overcooked
Yes.
with the Edge Play team, and it got heated.
Yeah, it did. It's a great fun game, and yeah, that's another like obviously that's maybe not a conventional thing you'd think of, but you do see some like the Pikachu, Detective Pikachu was a real sort of curveball in terms of that's not what you would have pictured, and maybe you could do the same. You could take Overcooked and you could make a Steven Seagal as a cook in a frantic train-based setting, perhaps.
I'm
Yeah,
in. Somebody write that screenplay because there's no way that's not getting bought.
Um, Gears of War, yes, that's another suggestion from Steve. That could really work. That's a great universe, great setting. Yeah, that would definitely get my attention.
Yeah,
So many options for it. Def- yeah, I think it's a great avenue to explore. And I think as you mentioned some of the other channels as well. We've got film definitely, TV absolutely, but comic books. We've talked about kind of shorts and cartoons, anime, all of those great channels just to get more of those worlds that do get lovingly crafted and created, and you want to understand more of. You want to understand the backstory. You want to know more of the characters. It's just yeah, it's great to, as you were saying, kind of expand the canvas, get it out of just the game experience. Um,
yeah. And we know from the numbers that fans enjoy this and clamor for it, and fans will do their own fan fictions and create videos and create stories. So it's there for the picking. If there's enough interest in your IP and you've got enough desire to do it, then yeah, it's absolutely worth exploring. As we said, it's not going to work for every title. The ones we've talked about are obviously huge games, but that doesn't mean that if you haven't built up a fandom around your game, it doesn't have to be the size of Assassin's Creed to be able to push those boundaries and try something different to kind of get in on this extended experience that we talk about and give fans another way of interacting with the game. You don't
I
have to be the biggest game in the world to
exactly.
do something different and interesting.
I think that's really interesting, and this is an exercise we do with our clients a lot. Is we kind of suggest, let's just take the restrictions and the limitations off the table. What could this look like if time and budget weren't an issue? And sometimes you can't. Yeah, you might have a smaller brand, a smaller budget, but if you picture what it could be and then you think actually that's got so much opportunity or that's so exciting, maybe there's a way we can figure out how to do this comic book or shorts, or there are ways, and it's a good way of building a small audience by having a larger surface area, operating in more channels. But yeah, we can't all make Hollywood blockbusters, but it's definitely worth kind of envisaging what might that look like if we could, and is there a version of that we can achieve.
Absolutely. And we could talk about this all day. We've got a longer video where we talk all about the extended experience on our YouTube channel. So you can go check that out on YouTube, Edge Play. And yeah, don't forget, after the show, the longer edition of the Madden video is also on the YouTube channel. So go check that out. In the meantime, you can hit us up on Twitter. We'll be back next week at 4 p.m. for another live show with more news, more checking out games, and we'll be chatting video games marketing. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us once again. Pleasure to have you. Thank you for speaking to us in the chat. We always like having conversations with you guys. And Dan, thank you very much for joining me
Thank
and
you.
talking about the extended experience. I know it's a struggle. You don't really like talking about it that much, but I appreciate you indulging me and having the conversation. So thank you for joining us. And yeah, we will see you next week.
Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week.